Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. Well, I do declare I've got no rhythm. You'll see there's a little space up there where I just moved the ladder and took down all the books that were piled up to the ceiling there. And I have them all here, and I'm going to show them to you. They are all books that I've read. I think I've got 18 here. At least one I know I've read that's not here. By an author called Ellen Gilchrist, who sadly passed away in the last couple of weeks. I read her obituary in the New York Times just this week, and then when I looked on Wikipedia, she died at the end of January. An author that was very dear to my heart in terms of the work of hers that I've read, which I think is nearly all of it, and also dear to my heart in terms of my evolution as a reader, in that I was introduced to her and then started independently reading her work, and I've followed her over a couple of decades. Although it's been a while since she had something new out that for me to buy and read. But I'll take you through a little bit about Miss Gilchrist's work, why I think she's fascinating. I do think, though, I may have mentioned her once or twice before, but I don't think anyone else is talking about her apart from when they talk about the Victory over Japan, which won National Book Award in 1984. So that was early on in her publishing career that she won a sort of major award in the US, and that's really when she peaked, probably commercially and just in terms of awareness. But she's published a lot. That was, I think, maybe the second book that she'd published, and she's published, as I say, I've got another 16 after that here, and one missing, so 17 other books of hers that I read since Victory over Japan. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about them. Interesting, Gilchrist only started publishing in her 40s, so she had lived a life before, and then she writes, I've got a couple of works of memoir where she says she needed to have lived a life before she could become a writer. And I would say probably now her writing is deeply unfashionable. She's a woman of the South. She's, I think, to this reader at least, a strongly feminist woman who writes about women who are strong, feminist, independent women who also love men and love sex and make mistakes and have bad marriages and drink too much and fall in love with men that drink too much. And she, 30 years ago, that did not seem like an impossibility. And yet now it'd be very much frowned upon, or it seems out of vogue for women writers to be, I want to be very careful choosing my words here, it's not about being dependent on men. For women writers, to write women who want to be in relationships with men, and not just the moony sort of romance, I don't know, but specific men and what they'll do in order to stay in a relationship, or when a relationship becomes untenable, and all these things are the kind of things that Gilchrist is writing about. As I say, vast, overwhelming majority of her protagonists are are women. And on a sidebar, I was thinking about, I haven't done my video yet about Barbra Streisand. I finished her autobiography. It took about 3 weeks. But magnificent. I mean, she's just a magnificent woman. And I was thinking about her songs. I listened to a podcast, apropos of the book, that was about the kind of songs that she was singing were already out of fashion, because she was coming at the end of the big Broadway boom in the 60s. People were moving away from that, and counterculture was starting, and the Beatles arrived in America, and she was still singing Broadway hits and selling massive records and winning a record of the year at the Grammys as a 24-year-old, singing sort of Broadway songs of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Breakout hit was Funny Girl, about a music hall star, Fanny Brice, and I think that, so the claim was being made in this podcast that actually she's kind of a role model and a figure for female singers now, which dominate the charts. Also, she won an Oscar for writing. She didn't start off as a songwriter, but she became a songwriter. And these singer-songwriters, and then when you look at the output, the kind of things Barbra Streisand is singing about is all what she'll do for her man, and how she wants a man, and there's a vulnerability. And I just contrast that. I'm not saying one better, one bad, but now when women talk, it's about how powerful they are, and they sing about how they don't need a man, or how you're just gonna have to put up with me because I'm the bad guy, I'm the anti-hero. So there's change. Okay, I don't want to say one better or one worse, but I see beauty in both, and any world that doesn't allow one or the other is, to my mind, less than perfect. So I'm pleased we have what we have now. But I don't think it replaces what we had. I think it builds and expands and can sit alongside a view of women where being in a relationship is a desirable thing or not. It's fine. It doesn't have to be the only desirable thing. That was bad when that was the only possible paradigm. But it just, there is we've introduced a new version of womanhood and femininity. That doesn't mean that everything that went before is necessarily wrong. It was just different. Now we have room for more. It doesn't count. Anyway, I think this has got off on a completely side angle. Let me take you through a little bit of Ellen Gilchrist, starting with her first collection, In the Land of Dreamy Dreams. Very dear. My introduction to Ellen Gilchrist was in high school. I started 11th grade, or for English people, the sixth form, in 1985, September 1985. And in England, you focus on 3 or maybe 4 subjects in your last 2 years of high school. You specialise, and one of the subjects I chose was English. And so I was put in a class where the teacher of the whole class was an English teacher, a fantastic and a mentor to me at that time, and a very key figure in my life, and helped me decide who I wanted to be. And occasionally, when he was teaching us English, but also he would occasionally read to us things that he was interested in. He was had his finger on the pulse and was very in touch with culture, and he would go to see a play in London, the hot new thing, a Torch Song Trilogy. Harvey Fierstein was over in London. No one knew what this thing was. He'd done it on Broadway. He was playing in London, and he would come back and report from the front lines of culture. And he read to us a couple of Ellen Gilchrist short stories. They may have been from this, I'm not sure. The one I remember from this most, this is our first collection from 1981. There's got my glasses over here. The famous pole at Jodie's Bar is a short story where we're introduced to a young Nora Jane Whittington. And one of the things that Gilchrist does throughout her works is there are a number of key characters who have their own world built around them, and they show up again and again and again. We follow them getting older, and then we see them younger again, and we see them in a marriage, see the marriage breaking up. We see all these characters at different stages of their lives, and they're all complex and interesting and fascinating and deeply rewarding character studies. This we see a very young 19-year-old Nora Jane Whittington, and I'm not going to spoil anything about her, but any Nora Jane story that you read will be thoroughly enjoyable and unexpected. None of these are stories with beginnings and you can see where it's going to end up. These are all character studies and snapshots of a time and something that happened, and the thought process behind it, and the self-doubt and the self-awareness, and then the impulse, everything that goes into actual human life. But this was her first collection. Love this, In the Land of Dreamy Dreams. After that, we have the prize-winning collection, Victorievich Band, which shot her to fame in America, 1984, I think, with the National Book Award. I think that's what it won. Again, short stories. Nora Jane shows up again, but we start here with Rhoda. Rhoda is another one of Gilchrist's recurring characters, Rhoda Manning. And then also Rhoda's family, and we learn what happened as this Nora Jane shows up again here. There's a whole section of Jane, so there's 3 Rhoda stories, 3 Nora Jane stories, and we also meet Crystal. Crystal is a genteel southern lady who has a maid called Trace Lean, who is African American. But the relationship is not master-servant. The relationship is 2 people who've grown old together, who have very little time for each other's horse shit. So the first story in the Crystal thing is Miss Crystal's name, the short story is called Miss Crystal's maiden name, Trace Lean. She's talking, she's telling everything she knows. And then the second story is Trace Lean's telling a story called A Bad Year. And then Trace Lean's diary, Dee Dee's talking, it's her turn. And Trace Lean, she's still talking. Those are the 5 short stories that come under Crystal. So as much about Trace Lean, the maid, as about Crystal, the southern, rich, white, genteel lady who employs Trace Lean. Victorievich Band, highly recommended, and it's got all the elements you'll find in Ellen Gilchrist's work, the recurring protagonists, the connected short stories, this sort of extended universe long before Marvel was doing it, long before David Mitchell was having interactions between all his books. Gilchrist is working on that in that register. After that, we've got Drunk with Love, another short story collection. So there's I've got short stories, but then there's also some novels coming up as well, and then some non-fiction. This is Drunk with Love. Also, I think goes in that. I'm guessing. I can't remember exactly, but I'm guessing this also includes stories with Rhoda and Nora Jane. But I have to go through. I am kind of tempted at least to go back and read those first couple of collections again, just because I have a sense memory of them more than a specific memory of each individual story. Light can be both wave and particle. First of all, fabulous title for a short story collection, and this is the next off the ramp. This is published in 1989 originally, and by the way, you can see all of these that I have so far, and the next couple are all published. These are UK editions, all published by Faber and Faber. So I would have picked these up, some new, some secondhand, mostly secondhand, I think, probably because that's how I bought books in those days. But they were being published in the UK. At a certain point, Ellen Gilchrist was no longer published in the UK. I'm guessing these weren't massive sellers. And I kind of think Ellen Gilchrist, everyone has hobbies. And most of us are lucky that some of the weird hobbies and the weird cul-de-sacs we end up down are shared with other people. So I like superhero comics. There are a bunch of other nerds who like superhero comics as well. I like reading noir fiction. I like Richard Stark, aka Donald Westlake writing as Richard Stark. I like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. There are a bunch of other people. There's a niche of people who read this. I remember growing up, I had a friend whose cousins were a fan of this Scottish band who I'd never heard of. I like music. You'll have heard them maybe. But this band Runrig, who were never huge and didn't have loads of smash hits, but they were a band and they gigged and they toured and released albums. And this couple used to follow Runrig round the country and go and see them 44. And I would look at them and say, okay, I get it. Not Bryan Adams. It's not, my sister's been to see Squeeze. I mean, Squeeze had a bunch of hits. Squeeze were a fairly big band. Runrig, no one was into Runrig, but this couple used to follow them around. And that's how I feel with Ellen Gilchrist. I've got people who will support me in every single other deep dive niche that I've got into. I've never met another person who is as invested in Ellen Gilchrist as I am. Okay, we've got Net of Jewels, I think is a novel rather than a short story collection, but it's a novel featuring Rhoda Manning. In Net of Jewels, the irrepressible, headstrong Rhoda Manning, now in her late teens. So we've seen Rhoda Manning married and older. Rhoda Manning's relationship with her father, who's a huge influence on her, and it's a very manly man and likes to take her out shooting. Now in her late teens, flings herself on a rebellious course towards destruction. Each one of these was just wonderful. So that was a big novel featuring one of her characters. Then we have I Cannot Get You Close Enough, which is 3 novellas, and also some of them feature members, I think, of Rhoda's extended family. And that's the last one I have favorite. Also missing from this collection is Star Carbon, which is another novel, I think, more than a short story collection. But somehow I've lent it to someone and I've never got it back. So I don't know where that is. But the last UK edition I have is published by, not by Faber & Faber, this is published by Bloomsbury Paperback. Smarter Man Than I Will Know is actually a connection, or she was no longer published by Faber and Bloomsbury picked her up. As far as I can tell, this is the last time she was published in the UK. So this is The Age of Miracles, with sort of little life type cover. Again, this is a short story collection, so we have a bunch of short stories with the recurring characters. Nora Jane, just saw Nora Jane's name come up there. There's Crystal Ann, who I think is maybe the granddaughter of Miss Crystal. I don't remember. But this was published in 1996 in the UK, and this may be the last time that Ellen Gilchrist was published in the UK, the last of her works to be published new in the UK. Fortunately, at this time, 1996, just about the time this was published, I might have bought this new in London. One second, I've got a date on it. It doesn't have a date on it, so I can't tell. But in 1996, I moved to Israel. That was doesn't help me buy Ellen Gilchrist books. But 1998, I got a job where I was traveling. I used to travel mostly to the US, or all over the world, but a lot to the US. So I was able to access US editions, and so this is pre-internet signing. There was no way of getting these things otherwise. My visits to the UK, I would go back and see family, but there were no more Ellen Gilchrist books being published. But I was in America, so I could go into a Barnes & Noble or what was the other one that closed down? Anyway, and pick up Ellen Gilchrist books. So this is a novel of hers. This is called Sarah Conley, and I've got this published by Back Bay Books. So this is a US edition, which I bought in 1998, and this would have been first published in 1997. So this is me arriving in America, going into a bookshop and going, wow, I can carry on reading Ellen Gilchrist. So I may well have bought new because I was so excited. I've got another one here, The Courts of Love. Also, I bought this in Borders for $12.95. Well, at least that's what they're on the back. And I bought this in February '98. Was that before? That was before. So I bought this one first. That one was October '98. Okay, so this one comes first in February '98, which is yes. I mean, that's when I would have been travelling to the States. And again, starts with Nora Jane is back. But I'm guessing all our other characters show up as well. So there's a whole Nora Jane and Company is the first half of this, and then some other stories. Then I managed to go back and find some of the novels. There's I think both of these are earlier novels that were never published in the UK. As far as I know, maybe someone can dig out a Faber and Faber version of these books. But I remember when I was still in the UK looking for these, and I don't think they were published in the UK because I think she was primarily seen as a short story writer there. So one of her early novels, the Anna Papers, and Anna Hand is the protagonist here, and I think she's a cousin or an aunt of Rhoda. I may have got that wrong, but this is a whole story about Anna Hand. I think Rhoda looks up to her because she's a famous novelist who suffered a tragic end, and this is the book about Anna's life and how she chose to live it. I remember coming across this. So again, I bought this at the same time. Must have bought these at the same time, same Borders, in February 1998, and I was so excited to find a copy of the Anna Papers, and I just dived into it and read it, and it's a richer and more expansive version of some of the short stories that we've been saying. It answers some of the questions in the short stories. Just wonderful. Anna Papers. I've got the Annunciation here, which I don't remember what it is. A rich board writer. I don't remember much about it. It's a novel, a standalone novel. I don't think this is related to others. And there's another novel as well, which I've never read, called Anabasis, which I think is a historical novel. And I've never even found that or bought that. The Annunciation was her first novel, so I don't think it's connected necessarily to the short stories. I've got that. I've got here some non-fiction, The Writing Life, where she talks about why she started. These are essays that she'd written. She was at one point after she won the book award, she was kind of on NPR for a little bit, and then there was a sort of change of management, and she was considered perhaps not politically correct enough for there she is, wonderful Ellen Gilchrist, and so she was a short-lived career on NPR. I think this collects some of the work, some of the writing that she did in that time. She was a teacher for many years at the University of Arkansas. She lived in Fayetteville, which I wish I had the accent where I could say Fayetteville, Arkansas, in a musical way, but I can't. That's this Writing Life. Then we've got another couple of so A Dangerous Age is a novel of hers. I bought this in 2010, so I'm just continuing where I find them when I go over to the States, and I can find these. Probably these are all secondhand. Some of these have got, for example, that one's got a remainder mark, so I didn't pay hardback cover price for this. I would have picked this up in one of those remainder stores in the US. There is Acts of God, which may be a short story. This is born in 2015. I can't tell. Yeah, I think it's short stories. I've also got here The Cabal and Other Stories, which is definitely a short story collection. The clue's in the title. Let's see here. So The Cabal is a short novel, and then we have some short stories afterwards. Again, this will feature all the same characters that we know. Really, maybe these bear rereading. Here's another one which has got the sticker price on there, $4.99, and a mark saying I must have picked this up in a remainder shop. This is Flights of Angels, I should say, which I bought in 2000. Some of these are in the wrong order. This was originally published in 1998, so already remaindered 2 years later in the States in hardback. And again, short stories, all these characters coming back. And yeah, there's a joy in returning to the same settings, the same scenes. This was a great collection focused on Rhoda. I, Rhoda Manning, go hunting with my daddy. And again, I would have picked this up somewhere. It doesn't have a remainder mark on it. Maybe I bought this online somewhere. First published in 2002. And then the final work I've got here is something, you know, in the days when you could just about search for names, or when Amazon started and I would do a search for Ellen Gilchrist, this book came up a lot. And I could never find it, could never find a copy of it, because it's not, you know, it's journals, it's not real, it's not really her writing or her novels or anything, it's just pictures of her and writing her journal. But eventually I did find a copy, and look at that. I don't know if you can see that half price sticker, $2.98. So this was a joy when I finally, that's my Ellen Gilchrist collection. There's an awful lot of it. And I'll take a thumbnail so you can see the whole thing, and the dirty tissue. That's good. And this is way too long to be talking about, because I doubt many of you are even interested in Ellen Gilchrist. I think if I was to recommend, I'd say start with, well, why not start with the prize winner? Start with Victory Over Japan, because that will give you the clearest taste of what's going on and the register that Gilchrist is writing in. In my experience, she has been a source of continued joy, as I say, over a couple of decades, from the late 80s, at least 20 years after that. I was reading her, and maybe if I ever get off this treadmill of having to read new stuff and acquire new books, maybe I would go back, and that would be a great place to start, rereading her short stories, which gave me just an enormous amount of pleasure. So rest in peace, Ellen Gilchrist. Thank you, and take care. God bless. Bye.